We're going to go to the... Okay. Welcome, everyone. I know you see me now. I'm not the temple, but God wants me to be the temple. And we are going for welcome to the class. We are going to discuss tonight, being that we are in the 9 days from Rosh Chodesh Av. So we have the very important lesson and the instruction that the Rebbe gave us that every year at this time we should study about the temple. The idea of studying about the temple has to do with the fact that it has a background story. It actually started many, many years ago before the second temple was even built. And it was the prophet Ezekiel, who was being shown the structure of the temple, of the future temple. And he was in Babylonia. He wasn't even in Israel. And when he asked God, what is the purpose of showing it to me, since we cannot build it? And he was told, I want you to study it. And the expression which the Medrash uses is just because my temple is destroyed and demolished, should I not have my temple existing? And the question is, what do you mean? You just said your temple is destroyed and demolished. So obviously it's not in existence. But the explanation is very clear. God said, I want you to study about it. And the very fact that we study about the temple, that gives it the consideration as if we are actually involved in constructing it. So we are going to discuss a few things about the temple. And you're also tonight going to have a special miniature structure of the temple, a model of the temple, what was made by our dear friend Baruch Shalom Clement, who worked very hard to get the permits and the license to be able to construct a temple in Bellevue, Washington. But he put it together, a magnificent little structure that you're going to have a chance to see and study from. But let me just introduce a few concepts, okay? And then we're going to go to the temple itself. So first of all, we have to understand that the importance of the temple for us is not only because it has historical factors, and not only because we are hoping that this is coming back to us with the coming of Mashiach. For the Jewish people, a very, very large part of practical Judaism is unpractical without a temple. Matter of fact, we have 248 mitzvot aseh, positive commandments, and because there is no temple and everything which surrounds the temple, from the 248, we are left with not more than 87. Can you imagine? In percentage, it's a very large percentage of mitzvot that doesn't even exist, can't be practiced, just because the temple doesn't exist. We are left with 87. That's what the Rebbe Maharash writes in the Maimer 87. There's a whole discussion how exactly you come up with the number 87, but not definitely seems pretty clear that not more than that. So obviously, when we talk about the Bet HaMikdash, we are anticipating something which will resume the practical observance of the entire Torah. So many times we stand Shabbat and we read a Torah portion, and you end up the portion and you say, well, none of that is practiced today. And it's so strange. It's a part of Torah, it's a part of life. It's like a part of our body, of the Torah body, and it's just happening because we have no temple. So obviously, for a person who is Jewish and is looking to practice the Torah, he sincerely needs to wish every day for the temple to resume, to return. And therefore, we actually say it every morning at the end of Amidah. We finished all the prayers, and as we know that the Amidah prayers is a substitute for offerings and services in the temple, and we say, Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei avotenu, may it be the will of you, God, the Lord of our fathers, that the temple should be rebuilt. It's been in our days. We ask for the building of the temple. You finish davening, and you say, what am I doing? What am I practicing? What am I keeping? I'm only doing part of what a Jewish life is. Even before davening, we have the order of korbanot, which people usually say to themselves before official services starts. If Mianan services for 7 a.m., they usually at like 10 to 7, a quarter to 7, you have to start reading the korbanot in order to catch up to the beginning of davening. Korbanot also ends up with the same line, may the temple be rebuilt. Matter of fact, are the two most important ceremonies, perhaps, that every Jew celebrates twice a year, the Passover Seder and the holy day of Yom Kippur. Both conclude with the three words of the Shana Abba Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. And when we say next year in Jerusalem, what do we mean by that? To eat falafel in Ben Yehuda Street, to go shopping in the Yehuda Market. When we say the Shana Abba Yerushalayim, it means that we are going to have our temple. And in that temple, we're going to be able to celebrate Pesach the way Pesach is meant to be celebrated, mainly with the Korban Pesach. And Yom Kippur is the same. We just spent a full day in shul, we davened, and we got a tournament. But we know, just by reading even the Avoda during the Yom Kippur service, so we know that a huge central theme of the Yom Kippur service was not practiced, wasn't done. And therefore, what do? Once we finish Yom Kippur and we all feel good, and thank God we're about to break the fast, and we thank God we had services, and thank God everything was okay, but we are not okay. We are not okay. We are okay, but not okay. We are okay that we Baruch Hashem fasted and we did what God wants from us to do. But we are not okay because we are not in Jerusalem. What's the point of being in Jerusalem? What's wrong with being in Bellevue? There's nothing wrong with being in Bellevue. The only thing is that we are missing the temple. Jerusalem is not Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the temple fact, which is Jerusalem all about. So this is, first of all, very technically speaking, is the importance and the centrality of the temple in Jewish life. Number two, and as important, perhaps even more important, the temple was the home for God. This is where godliness was revealed. When people came to visit the temple, especially during the three major holidays, Shalosh Regalim, that we were obligated to go visit the temple, the Pasuk says, Shalosh Pamim Bashana, Yera'eh Kol Schurcha, you should be seen. And it's not only to be seen by God, but to see God. What does it mean to see God? In the temple, there was miracles. In Pirkei Avot, we read every year a couple of times about the 10 major miracles which took place in the temple that everybody witnessed, such as slaughter shop and no flies. That's what it said. Such a smell of burning meat and no miscarriages. Such a jammed crowd and no one feels greasy. right, or pushy. We read it about it. It's in Pirkei Avot. Yeah, we read all the miracles, the list. You usually don't come on Shabbos afternoon. You're going to take a nap, but after that, even later than I'm sorry, no excuse. This is later. This is after Mincha, and we read Pirkei Avot. You can study it. Go look it up yourself. You can see. We have Asara Nisim Naasu La'avotenu Bebet Hamikdash. There were 10 miracles that we read. Now, when we say about the miracles, what's the idea about miracles? Miracles means that when a person came to the temple, he felt that there was a God in the world. Godliness was a reality. And when you have godliness as a reality, you come home, you know what to be focused on, and you don't lose your identity. You know, you put God in the center of things. That was the temple. The temple was a place of God. It was God's home. When God said, make me a temple, he said, make me a place to live. He's kind of homeless, and he needs a place that he's going to feel home and be revealed and open and practice. So this is the two major elements of the temple. There's a lot more, but the two main elements of the temple is what? First of all, like I said, practical Judaism needs a temple in order to practice it. There is a 50% more of our mitzvot are unmaterialized because we have no temple. Korbanot, the holidays, the Yom Kippur, the daily menorah, lightings, high priest, the garments of the priest, the king, all this is temple related. And then comes obviously the more inner dimension and the more inner idea of the temple. Come in, make yourself at home. Of the temple is the fact that we are that we are not having we can't see God, we can't be seen by God. The original temple, there's a history to the temple that we have over here in front of us. We have a number of mishkanot, which means a number of tabernacles, which it was the temporary dwelling. Started with the first mishkan, which was built in the midbar, built in the desert. And this is the first place where they built it. And that obviously stood for the entire 40 years that we were in the desert, right? Once they came into Eretz Israel, that original Mishkan was constructed by Moshe Rabbi. Once they came into Eretz Israel, they came to a place called Gilgal. Gilgal was an area which they spent in Israel at the entrance of Israel, and they were waiting to conquer the land. And they were waiting to divide the land between the 12 tribes. It took them how many years? 14 years. And for these 14 years, there was also a Mishkan, but that was again a temporary structure in a place called Gilgal. From Gilgal, they came to another place called Shiloh. In Shiloh, different than the original Mishkan, they were building a tabernacle made out of stone, avanim. And that stone temple structure was also spread over with the curtains of the original Mishkan. There was no rooftop there, but that was a structure which stood for many years. The Rambam says there was 369 years. It's almost close to the amount of years of the temple in Jerusalem. 369 years is with the center of Judaism in Israel, the celebrations, the holidays, the korbanot, the everything took place in Shiloh. Many of the stories in Tanakh happened in Shiloh. The story with Eli and Hannah and the prayer for children, right? It happened in Shiloh. After Shiloh, it was actually after Eli Cohen passed away, they came to Nov and Givon, and together it was 57 years that the structure was between Nov and Givon until Shmuel Hanavi, Samuel the prophet passed away. Finally, it was King David who purchased a piece of real estate from a non-Jewish fellow with the name of Aravna the Yebusite. And from him is where they built, they purchased the land, and there is where God said is the place that I chose to be my home. And it's very interesting that the Rambam, Maimonides, when he titled the different laws, so every group of laws has a title. Laws of prayer are called what? The laws of prayer, Ilchot Tfilah. The laws of Shabbat are called the laws of Shabbat. What do you think the laws of the temple are called? Should be called what? Ilchot Bet HaMikdash. So in proper Hebrew, they should say the laws of the Bet HaMikdash, the house of the Mikdash. But that's not what the Rambam calls it. If you're going to look in the Rambam Ilchot Bet HaMikdash, you put in Google search Ilchot Bet HaMikdash in Rambam, you're not going to get it. You're going to get Ilchot Klei HaMikdash, you will get the vessels of the Mikdash, of the sanctuary, but not of the house. You know what the house is called? Ilchot Bet HaBchira.
Oh, the choice house.
The laws of the chosen house. And the whole idea is that the temple's home, but the home of what the temple is, and the whole idea of where it is, it's all related to God choosing a place, identifying this is where I want to be. A matter of fact, we all know the history of the original Mizbeach, where the altar stood throughout the temple times. Which, by the way, we had the first temple and second temple, 410 years the first, 420 years the second. That home had history before the temple was built there. Who was the first person who offered a sacrifice on the temple side? Who?
Abraham.
Before Abraham.
Oh,
Adam, first man, was already offering an offering at the place where the altar stood eventually, to the point that our sages use a very beautiful expression. You know what they say? Adam mimekom kaparato nivra. Adam, man, was created from the very same place where he would find his autonomy. Because Adam was made of earth, right? So there was a location somewhere in the world that Adam was formed. God collected the earth, made a mix with a structure, and then died, blowing a breath of life. Was it in Tel Aviv? Was it in Uganda? Was it in Ukraine? In Samarkand? Where? That very site. He will eventually get his atonement. This is the spot where he was created from. In other words, the atonement for man who will eventually stumble and need to be atoned is already determined from the moment of creation. Following that, the Rambam brings, it was till Avram, there's at least 4 stories until Avram. We have an offering. Who is the first story of an offering in the Torah? No, before Noah, Cain and Abel. That was this famous story that God accepted his, didn't accept the other. That happened on the very same spot. The Torah tells us later Noah comes out of the ark, he built an altar, same spot. The story of Isaac's, the binding of Isaac, Akedat Yitzchak, all happened on the very same spot. And that is one of the very important reasons that even if we can build a temple today, but we're not going to do it for this very fact that the measurements and the location of the altar is extremely crucial. And it has to be exactly at the point with all those altars stood originally. If you move out a few inches here, a couple of feet there, you might be maybe in the place, but if it's not 100%, if you're 99% in the place of where the altar stood, you're 100% not doing your korban right. It has to be exactly. And therefore, people who wanted to build a temple, is it's not going to help them much because we don't have, that's the one thing, we don't have the exact measurement of the Mizbeach. To the point that when the second temple was built, and it wasn't too many years, it wasn't like today, 2,000 years since the second temple. It was only 70 years. But because of the exile experience, they needed to have Nevi'im, they needed to have prophets to come. There were 3 prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And one of the prophets' job was to identify exactly where the location of the Mizbeach is. Where is it? Where did it stood? Another one gave the measurements. Another says that you can even offer sacrifices even if the house is not built yet. But you had a Navi, you had a prophet that his job was to identify what? The location. The location is very, very crucial when it comes to build the Mizbeach. Now, what is the most important parts of the temple structure that we're going to be watching in a few minutes? Meaning, it's all important, but what is the dividing parts? Like, what is the main elements of the temple structure? So the Rambam actually makes it very clear. And if anybody wants to study about the temple, you can go to anywhere, starting from Chabad.org, all the way to Chabad.org, that you're going to find exactly how the temple was built, and also mainly what are the most important. The Rambam says as follows, and I'm reading you actually from the Lashon of the Rambam. Eilu ein hadvarim shehen ikar bebinyan habayit. The following elements are essential when constructing the sanctuary. He gives us 3 things. Number 1, Kodesh. We'll see in a moment what it entails. Kodesh means what? The holiest, or the sanctuary. Number 2, Kodesh HaKodashim. Either the Holy of Holies or the Holy of Holies. Depends who your English teacher is. Arnold was in the opinion that I have to say the Holy of Holies. Ken, you also in the opinion, Holy of Holies. Do you agree with me that Holy of Holies?
I always agree with you, really.
That's not a good. And then, what do you say?
Very good on that.
Holy of Holies.
Also Holy of Holies? Okay, sold. Holy of Holies. And the third thing is before, in front of the Holy of Holies, there is a place called Ulam. Ulam is like a hole. Hall. And all these three things together, they are called Heichal. And Heichal is another word of the temple. In that sanctuary, they made different important required what's it called? Kelim, utensils. So let's first discuss for a moment. We're going to take a look what stood before the Holy of Holies. They had 3 parts, 3 different utensils. Number 1, they had Mizbeach, the altar, what was used for offering the Korban Olah, the all burnt sacrifice and other sacrifices, which we call the regular altar. That altar also had a kevesh. What is the kevesh called? Iran. That's how you climbed up to the altar. There was no step. And that was positioned before the entrance to the Heichal. So when we spoke before, there is the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Heichal, that was in the Ulam before the Heichal. So when you walked into the temple, it was before you walked into the sanctuary. And obviously before you walked into the Holy of Holies is where that main altar was. This was the altar which all the Korbanot was usually offered. Another item was there, and this is the kior, the sink, the basin, which they used to wash. The Kohanim used to have to wash their hands and their feet. for the service, and that was just between the ulam, the hall, and the mizbeach. More towards the south is where that the basin and the laver, I think they call it, is which stood there for the washing of the hand. Every time you come into the Beis Hamikdash, regardless how clean you are, you wash your hands. Just like before davening, you go over to the sink. It's a way of preparation, preparing yourself. And then you had in the area called Kodesh, or which we translate as holy, or we translate as sanctuary, there was the famous three important items. What were they? Anybody? Number one, they had the golden altar, which was used for Ktoret, for the spices. It wasn't for a korban. That was a special offering of spices which created a aroma and smoke. Ktoret, called Ktoret. Yeah. And that was the golden altar. Number two, it was the menorah. And number three, it was a table for the lechem apanim, for the showbread. So the truth is that all these three items are mystical, serve a mystical purpose. Meaning the mizbech, you can also say it serves a mystical purpose, but ultimately there is an animal, you slaughter it, you sprinkle the blood. The menorah was not to serve as a light bulb for the sanctuary. It was just a service of illuminating the people, the neshamas, the world. The Ktoret is completely something which is beyond any understanding. Just putting different types of spices, very particular, and the smoke has to go up in a very specific way to the point that there was one family only who knew the secret how to create the proper mix, which will have the smoke going up in that unique way, which was the way it was required to go up, Ma'aleh Ashan. And then when you talk about the showbread, I don't think even commentaries came up with any explanation for the showbread. The showbread, yeah, the golden table, every Shabbat, they used to place the 12 loaves remaining on the table for 7 days, doing what? Looking at each other, right? One loaf looks on the other loaf. No one is eating yet. No one is touching it. The next, a week later, a week after, they take it off, distribute to the Kohanim. The miracle was that they remained fresh after a week. And then, what do they do again? 12 loaves again. For what? For when? This is again very esoteric. These three is in the Kodesh. The menorah was when you entered. If you watch where this temple is, so these beautiful boys are sitting. This is where you enter. You come in. You go all the way up to the Kodesh, and then at the left side, at the south, is where the menorah was. On the right side, which is in the north, is where the table was, right? Menorah bedorim, shulchan betzafain, and both will kind of the sides of the Holy of Holies, which is in front of it, right? And then you had the altar, which was kind in both in between of them, not in the center, but more tilting towards the outside. So this is the main purpose of it. The Holy of Holies only had one item only, but that item is considered the ultimate purpose of this entire structure. Like we said before, the Mishkan, the Beis Hamikdash serves a dual purpose. One is for the Jewish people to practice their mitzvot, korbanot mainly, which a big part of Judaism is to come to the Beis Hamikdash and be part of that service. But what's the second item? God's home. This is the most important item of it. Which part in the sanctuary was the sanctuary, the perhaps if you want to call it the bedroom, the private place that God is there in its full, projecting its full energy and essence? That was in the Holy of Holies. In the Holy of Holies, what generated that Shekhinah, the divine presence, to sit and to dwell? That was the ark, the Oron. In between, there is where the voice came out. This is where the presence of God was, to the point that no one even ever walked in there except the Kohen Gadol, the holiest man of the Jewish society, who once here on the holiest day, which is Yom Kippur. That's when he walked into the holiest place called Kodesh HaKadoshim, with a special program that we read in the Yom Kippur service, what kind of garments and what kind of immersions, once in the mikveh, twice in the mikveh, and three times in the mikveh, and changing his clothes and back and forth. Chomesh, Tvilos, Vasora, Kiddushin, Toyin, and Godel, Mechaper, Babayoy, Bekula. This is the whole interacted humor. The Gemara tells us all these amazing things which happen by the Kohen Gadol entering this Holy of Holies, which the moment of entry was the most powerful moment of the year. That actually brought about the Kapora, the atonement, which God willing we should see very soon. Okay, but that needed a building. Like every synagogue needs a building, needs an office, needs a kitchen, needs a men's section, a women's section, storage. Can you imagine the temple, which had so much services going on there? Every day, sheep, lambs, sheep for the korbanot, pouring wine, pouring oil, wood for the altar, flour, people coming, buying stuff, buying korbanot, getting ready to walk in, Kohanim needing to immerse themselves, dormitory, the Kohen Gadol, the week.
They didn't sleep in the temple.
Where did they sleep?
Outside here.
No, they actually, it's going to show, we're going to see soon, they actually had the temple made in such a way that the steps which came out, that they should be able to lie down there. The Kohanim were there at night too. Not everybody.
They were sleeping on the stairs.
Yes.
They didn't have bed.
No. They put their clothes behind their back as a pillow. And they had the Kohen Gadol. He was the only one who actually had a designated bedroom, a chamber, because he was there a week before Yom Kippur. He had to stay there. He wasn't allowed to leave the temple. And there's no such thing not to sleep 7 days straight, right? So he had a chamber called the Kohen Gadol's chamber. And
if there was a day they were there, at other times they were sleeping outside.
yeah, they had apartments. Some of them lived in Tel Aviv, some of them lived in Haifa. Yeah, they lived all kind of places.
Where were they sleeping on the stairs?
Because they had the Kohanim were divided into 24 groups, and it was working in a routine. Different Kohanim had their designated weeks that they had to work in the temple, like Miluim. You came, and when you worked, you actually had to stay there and perform your service. And at that time, you didn't go home. They stayed there. They had to be there in the morning. There was a whole system of a person in charge and the Kohanim, because some of them were not even allowed to sleep. The Beis Hamikdash, very interestingly, The Torah requires, in Parshas Korach, the Torah tells us the Beis Hamikdash needed to have guards, Shmirah, and not because they were afraid from Hamas or the Hezbollah. They were like the changing guards in Buckingham Palace, Buckingham Palace. What do? Garnish. They stand here. A ceremonial. But it brings respect to the place that the people are watching it. And the Rambam actually discussed it in detail. Who were the watchmen? This comes from the Talmud. There were 24 groups of watchmen. They were watching in 23 places. There were the Levites watching from the inside. There were the Kohanim watching from the outside. At the original Mishkan, Moshe was one of the watchmen. And
Moshe died before, he didn't go in.
what? The Mishkan, the old Chabbalas. So they had Moshe watching it. They had the Levim, Aaron. God tells them, if you and Levim and the Kohanim, if this is in the Chumash, they were given the job. And the Rambam actually describes that the idea of watching is not because, it says clearly, not because they were afraid of any thieves, not because they were afraid of any robbery, but rather they wanted to identify the place as a respectful place. And you can't compare a place which has guards or doesn't have guards. So all these needed a structure. And from here, we're going to turn to the structure. So we have, those who are on Zoom, I don't think you're able to watch it completely. I'm going to put you as close as possible. But we are going now to go over and I'm going to show you what different parts in the structure were serving. You're going to have to stand up if you want to really watch it. But before, I'm going to ask Baruch Shalom to maybe explain a little bit about the structure that he built it, the Chabad.
Okay. Should I take it down?
Maybe it's easier to take it down. Yeah, makes more sense. Don't break it. Okay, here. You guys, you see it on Zoom? You see it? Hello?
Not real well. Getting better. Up a little bit, maybe looking
Now?
down.
Okay, we'll do the best. We'll slowly get back at you. Go, Shalom is now talking.
Thank you.
Okay.
So basically, I got interested in the third temple online. I was doing some reading. And so I wondered, I did model making when I was younger. And I thought maybe I could make a model. I thought, from scratch. And when I bought a book on the third temple, it has all pictures and so forth. And so again, I found a model to design it, but it's a model of the third temple according to Ezekiel, and it's created by the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. So you can go online and buy it. It costs $200-300, and basically when you get it, just to show you how it's constructed, there are 6 plates like this, and they're laser cut, and you just punch them out, and then all the pieces fit together. It has a manual that tells you how to do that. The gold trim came punched out of this thing, and there are a couple of sheets of this, and that's how it was put together. But there's a lot of detail in here. Just a little side here. You see this thing right here? This is only decorative, and each one of these fins is actually 2 of these gold pieces glued together, and then there's a circular thing here that you have to glue and let it set, and then you can place each one of these fins inside there. So for each one of these things, there's 6 fins, so that's 12 pieces you're glued together just to make one of these things. Okay, so this is the east entrance. That's the main entrance, and my understanding, Rabbi, is that no one can enter in this except the Kohen Gadol and Moshiach, or something like that. I think.
People used to come from the side entrance.
Yeah, so these are the two sides. So this is the east entrance, this is the west entrance. Well, there's no entrance over here. And you're supposed to glue everything, and I did glue everything, except I'm trying to beautify the mitzvah, okay? So one of the things that I wanted to do, first of all, I wanted to have people to show the scale. So I went online and model railroad stuff, and they didn't have miniature Kohanim, but they had miniature Arabs. So I got some miniature Arabs, but I painted yarmulkes on them. And so anyway, I'll move this around and show you. You can see the scale. Okay. I did that tonight, Rabbi. You haven't seen those.
I thought when I came in.
I'll just bring it around so everybody can see it.
Are they suicidal? No.
Not yet. You know, okay. You see what I did? Okay. So anyway, that's the regulation. Take a quick look. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So this building here only has 3 sets of windows, and it has 3 stories of it. But it's actually the height of the 17-story building. So that's the scale. So the other the other thing that I'm thinking about now in beautifying the mitzvah is lighting. Yes, question.
Questions about when the third temple is built, are other buildings, non-temple buildings, allowed to be taller than it?
Not in Jerusalem. It's a good question. But in Jerusalem, there has to be the tallest.
So I was interested in perhaps lighting. One thing that I read when I was reading about the temple is that Hashem's light is like the blue light that comes through a sapphire. If you light through a sapphire, the blue light comes out. So I didn't glue everything because I'm trying to figure out how to do it. So I take this thing off, and then the Beta Mikdash comes out, and I cut a hole in the floors. And what I've come up with is
In the family are getting idea.
what's that?
You put the LED light.
Yeah, and so here you can see I've got 2 corks. Drill a hole through there. Covered, you can see where the wires are coming out. And so that's for the temple. And then I was thinking for the lighting to do that, you got the LED lights. So how do you shine it through a sapphire? So I found online you can buy raw sapphires fairly cheaply. So I bought some, crushed them, and I'm experimenting now with putting them in so how do you get the light up inside? Well, I got test tubes that were just the right size. They fit on these cords, and I'm experimenting with different ways of putting the sapphires in them so that if I want the light to come out of these windows. So that's what I'm currently working on. And then these are 4 Jewish courts, 3 stories each, and I didn't glue those either. And I'm not sure if I'll put a light there, but they do come up. And so you can see where I painted a circle. You can drill a hole there, wire comes up, LED, and I haven't figured out what type of light, but there is a light that they sell in Monteveros that is it looks like a torch. So I may put that in there just to see how that looks. And anyways, so entrance, this is the inner court. This is the altar right there that the rabbi was talking about, and the ramp. And that's everything.
I'm going to share now a little more information about it. I'm going to come over here. Okay. So when we take a little tour into the temple, maybe first of all, when it talks about decoration, it's very important to notice that the Rambam actually says that there's a mitzvah to strengthening the building and to beautify it. And he says that you do it according to the abilities of the people. If people have the opportunity to plate it with gold and magnify all of its aspects if possible, then they should do that. In other words, it all really depends what we would like to do. Okay, so this, like I said before, I want to just go over a little bit chambers, the different chambers. Inside, we know there is you can later come and take a look. I can see inside there is the altar, there is the ram, there is the little converted Arabs who are doing their service. There is the washing station. All the way, what happens in the holy, I guess that's close. You have to go in there, so you're going to find the menorah, you're going to find the other things. Now, there was a number of chambers. There were actually many different chambers. I'm going to go over with you tonight. The little time we have, I want to talk a little bit about the different chambers and what they served. Okay? Just actually different names they had and served different purposes. So first of all, that this area right here was called the Ezrat Nashim, the women's courtyard, and this was before entering into the altar, with everything else was happening. No, that was later. That balcony, which we speak about and what we see about, that was only done once a year on Sukkot. When they were dancing down here, originally even the dancing was kind of a separation, but then it became too big of a crowd and it was difficult to control and separate the men and the women dancing. So they had the women going on a balcony and the men were downstairs. But originally this whole area is called Ezrat Nashim. And in that Ezrat Nashim, there were 4 chambers on each corner. The southeast chamber, imagine right here, was called chamber of Nazirites. A Nazir, somebody took a Korban Shlomim at the due day of the Nazirite period, and it came to conclusion. They used to walk into that chamber. They cook the Nazirite Shlamim offering, and they used to actually shave their hair. For the first time was in the chamber of the southeast of the Ezrat Nashim. Northeast, right here, was a chamber called Lishkat Dir Ha'etzim. There was the chamber of clearing or examining wood. Basically, the wood which was offered that was placed on the altar, and not only was it used for offering sacrifices, but there was a mitzvah to have an ongoing burning fire 24/7. Esh tamid tukad ala mizbeach lo tichbeh. There was an ongoing fire which was never to be extinguished.
That's what that's supposed to represent.
That's supposed to represent. Turn on the light right now. So that ongoing fire, right? Esh tamid, very good. So they need to have wood, and they wanted to make sure always that the wood which is being used for sacrifices, just like the sacrifices has to be, chosen and perfect, so too the wood should be also in and of the highest quality. So they had Kohanim, special priests, and it was mainly the priests which were disabled, and therefore they couldn't perform the service in the Bet HaMikdash. Disabled Kohanim couldn't do their service because of their disabilities. The Torah wants the Kohen with services to have no blemish on him physically. But they used to sit in that northeast chamber and check the wood. make sure that there's no worms or what do you call it, termites or any other issues. That should be a very nice, presentable piece of wood for the purpose of the altar. Then northwest, at the third corner, there was another chamber, and that was called Lishkat Ametzoraim, the chamber of the ones who had tzaraat. Basically, there was a mikveh in that chamber, and anyone who was in a state of tzaraat immersed themselves as part of the process of purification. So there was a mikveh in that northeast chamber, which they used to go in and able to immerse themselves before, as they complete their tahara. First of all, there was no system of being outside of the camp, etc. But then when they already started gradually making their way to the temple after the state of purification, that was the northwest corner chamber called Lishkat HaMetzorayim.
Directionally, if you enter into a gate, is that the direction that you were supposed to be in? That's what. So
Usually-
going this way is east, so that.
They usually used to come in from here. Everybody used to come in. If you wanted to go to those chambers,
Yes.
it depends on which side of Jerusalem you came. You came either from the north or from the south. Nobody came from the east.
So wouldn't
Nobody,
it matter if you're a man or woman? If you're a woman, wouldn't you go? this
doesn't
way?
matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That was the main entrance.
Is north.
I am sitting on north, exactly. But the chambers were right here in the center.
It's a Nicanor.
Nicanor was here. We'll come to that moment. So then, on west, at the southwest corner, there was called Lishkat Betshmania. This is with the storage. They used to keep the wine and oil. Like I said before, they needed a lot of wine and oil in order to be able to serve, especially for the nesachim, the libation, which came together with the sacrifice. There was a daily need for wine and oil. Then, in addition to that, there were 4 chambers more on the outside corners. At the southwest, it was called Lishkat Atlaim, the chamber of the lambs. They used to keep lambs to offer as sacrifices, and every lamb had to be examined 4 days before servicing it, before offering it, had to be examined on any blemish. So you had to keep them somewhere. That was the chamber of lambs, Lishkat Atlaim.
Did they keep the food for the lambs to feed them during the
They had food, and they also mainly were, what?
We just looked up in the room and you guys-
They were there
4 days stuck in the
4 days. No, they have to be, first of all, there was no roofs here, so they had to fresh air if you worried about the air. And, yeah, they figured it out. Maybe they took it for a walk.
They had lamb that.
How about you maybe?
Lamb that.
Then they also had on the southeast corner, they had the chamber of the bakers of the showbread. They had their own chamber where they were preparing all this bread on the southeast corner. On the northeast corner, there was a special chamber which was serving a storage, like a gniza. If you remember that the kings, especially the Greek kings, desecrated the Bet HaMikdash. So the stones of the altar kind of became desecrated, so they can't throw it out. It's holy stones. So they kept it in a chamber of the southeast corner. Of the northeast, there was a northwest. It was a chamber which actually was more like a structure covering for the stairs going down to a mikveh. There was a mikveh under the what's it called? Under the structure of the Beis HaMikdash. And obviously, like I said before, in the Rambam, you're going to find all the details and the measurements. Now, in that Ezrat Israel, right here, there was additional, right here, coming in, there was from the south, there was 3 chambers coming in from the south and 3 chambers coming in from the north. These were people who were able to walk. It was like a general area, so to speak. Right here where I'm sitting, no, where you are sitting, Dina, from the south, they had 1 chamber called Lishkat Melach, which they kept the salt, which they needed to salt. All the korbanot needed to be offered with salt. Next to it was called Lishkat HaParva, a special chamber which they used to salt the skin of the sacrifices, was salted in that particular chamber.
After.
Right? And then there was Rishkat Medichin, a chamber which was used to wash, the washing chamber, to wash the parts of the sacrifices. It needs to be rinsing. Water in the chamber to take care of it. It was in the south. Right here, I'm sitting in the north. He came in, there was a chamber called Lishkata Gazit. Gazit is a type of wood. And that stone, that chamber was actually, the chamber was for the courthouse. So as you know, the Supreme Court was also meant to dwell at the Beit HaMikdash, right? That's called the Sanhedrin. Sure. Yeah, they had to be in the Beis Hamikdash. Anybody who had a serious discussion, a serious court case, had to come to the Beis Hamikdash. That was their chamber. And it was built in a way that half of it was sticking out from the temple actual site, so that you were able to see. But inside the temple, no one was allowed to ever sit. You were only allowed to stand. But the judges need to sit. That's a part of the legal requirement that the witnesses and the litigants are standing and the judges are sitting. But it was made in a way that the back of it was kind of tilted or towards the outside of the Beis Hamikdash so they can see. Next to it was a special chamber called Lishkat Agula. Gula is a type of lifting bucket, which they had basically a water well, and from there they used to provide water to clean the courtyard and for everything they needed. So that was that chamber. And then it was the chamber, like I said earlier, with the coin that is, especially during the 7 days before Yom Kippur. So when you get a picture of the temple, a more detailed picture, but the Rambam actually drew himself, is this kind of picture, which it gives you on the side the numbers, and it gives you the description of every spot, what serves and where it was positioned and what was its main purpose. So like I said before, the Beit HaMikdash is a very fascinating subject. It's not a difficult subject, it's a fascinating subject. I think what Bruce did in building this little miniature of the air and now getting involved in electricity is amazing. That's a good job, Bruce. Keep it up. And I think it's a good thing that they say when the Rebbe was a young child, he built also a tabernacle when he was in a model of the Beis Hamikdash. I never built a model, but I tried to learn about the temple, and I watched different models. When we were kids, I studied in a school called Etz Chaim. It was in Jerusalem. The original Ashkenazic school of Jerusalem used to be in the old city, and then we moved to the Machne Yehuda area, which that's where I went to school. When we came to the time of learning about the Mishkan, we traveled in a van to an orphanage house at the entry to Yerushalayim called the Diskin Orphanage House. You might have heard about it. It's a famous orphanage house in Jerusalem. I think it's still existing till today. In that orphanage house, they had one of the rooms was a room with a beautiful, large, I'm talking large like these old tables together, of this Mishkan. And all the kids stood around, and our teacher stood there with a little stick, and pointing, this is the menorah, this is the chamber. Today, if you go visit Yerushalayim, the Temple Institute in the old city, you can find amazing displays of golden structures, diagrams of the Beis Hamikdash. When the big yeshiva was built in Greece before the war by the America, also one of the pictures of it designated for a structure, a model of the Beis Hamikdash, mainly because we study and learn about it and hear about it, and it's very important to be able to visualize it and then be able to internalize it. So Bezrat Hashem, we have a very big plan in the next few days. The temple is going to be built in Jerusalem. Hopefully the Jewish and Israeli Supreme Court is not going to stop it. With all the politics there. But hopefully Moshiach will know how to deal with that. There's a plan to have a temple on the Temple Mount, and the sign that it's the right thing in the right time is when the entire Arab world is going to be silent. Not only they're not going to demonstrate against it in the UN, etc., they're actually going to look to support it, and they're going to send gold and silver, like it was in King Solomon's days. When King Solomon built the temple, actually Lebanon, talking about Lebanon today in the news, Lebanon was the place where they went down to get the lumber. The lumber came from Lebanon. There was from Ethiopia a great queen, the name of Malkat Shiva, who came Shiva, and she brought gold. And from Zor came other things. From the whole world they came and tried to be part of it. And in a peaceful way, that's why his name was Shlomo. Shlomo means peace. So this is something that we are anticipating to happen very soon, like I said. And may Hashem help us and continue doing good deeds and daven and pray, so it should truly be experienced instead of the turmoil that we're all going through now. Maybe that's a part of the reason they're so quiet still for a few days. They're getting ready to do the right thing, to submit and to say, guys, it's all done, right? That's taken care of. Come on, the party, the war is over. And by the way, you see this little sticky point that Bruce made? This, but by the way, the temple, this was the reality all over Iran, because they didn't want the birds to come and make out of the temple yard. There was no roof. So they made this little frames on top. So they find it difficult to figure it out.
Find a landing, find a landing spot.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Beis Hamikdash, Sheibaneh Beis Hamikdash, Me'ah Be'ameh, Say, Okay. 1991, I'm going to close this phone. I'm going to show you something. Thank you all for being on the Zoom. And we'll
Thank
see you,
you.
Bezrat Hashem. You're
Thank you,
very
Rabbi.
welcome. You're very welcome.